Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I'm very excited to have with me Martine Cohen, and let me tell you about Martine. Martine has been an attorney for over 25 years with a love for everything strategy. A pivotal turning point in her life catapulted her into an extraordinary journey of profound awareness, self-discovery, and freedom. In the process, she gained a unique understanding of the inner workings of the brain, which ultimately led her to successfully heal herself energetically from the inside out. Martine is also a certified life coach, Reiki Master, ThetaHealing Practitioner, energy codes facilitator, an inspirational speaker, and the best-selling author of No More Layers. Now, Martine supports executives, coaches, and other successful leaders with potent and personalized insights, life strategies, brain hacks, and tools to enhance their personal and professional life experiences so that they can truly thrive rather than just survive. Today, we're going to talk about a very interesting subject, winning from the inside out, how to change your inner landscape to shift the external outcomes. So please join me in welcoming my guest, Martine Cohen. Martine, so excited to have you talk about this.
Thank you for having me, Vicki. Excited to be here.
We always start out with a couple easy questions. The first is, where do you live? Where do you call home?
Montreal, Canada, actually. That's
all
home.
Your life?
All my life. And right now it's snowy and cold.
Yeah. It's sunny and a little chilly today. What is it? 39 degrees. So
yeah, I think it's all relative.
Fahrenheit. Yeah. But, I always can take the cold if it's sunny out. When it's gloomy. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, and you tend to have gray days, and those aren't fun.
Oh, I totally agree. So in Canada, in winter, when there's sunny days, it's really cold outside, but at least it is sunny. It feels nice.
Yes. So share a little bit about your journey. We touched a little bit on it in the bio, but really, what was that aha moment, that time where you really knew that this is the direction, this is your vision and passion that led you to do what you do today?
So it was more than an aha moment. It was kind of like, when you sometimes get messages from the universe as this is the path that universe now decides that you should walk on. And you're like, yeah, I hear you, but not really. I'm going to continue in my safe space and doing what I'm doing. And then that message gets louder and louder. And for me, it literally hit me over the head. I was in a very serious car accident, actually. There was a car that rammed into me. I didn't even see them coming in the driver's side, and I lost consciousness and I suffered a very serious concussion.
Wow.
So for me, it was more a period of darkness and not having my brain function properly. That was actually what I call like the blessing of a dysfunctional brain. It was really a silver lining. My brain was not in my way, so I was able to sort of like, take a look at my fears, go inward, explore my inner landscape, all, sort of like the limiting beliefs that we accumulate, the gunk, I like to call it, from childhood. The book is called No More Layers because it's really the layers that stand between who we truly are in our essence and what we believe we must be, or how we live our lives, confined to, a safe space that our brain keeps us in, that kind of status quo, because it's afraid of change and afraid of expansion and growth. And so because my brain wasn't functional, I could just go freely and explore. And that's when I realized that we're so much more than our brain. We're so much more than all those, mental constructs and identities that we've created for ourselves, or that others have created for us, that we bought into. And that opened up a whole new world for me.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So let's talk about, how do you listen to your true self first before listening to everyone else?
Yeah. So I'm going to add to that, if you don't mind. How do you
Yeah.
listen to your true self before you listen to your brain and your
Yeah.
thoughts and your fears, let alone everybody else? It's actually easier to sort of tune out everybody else to a certain extent. It's much harder to tune out your own thoughts and emotions, right? Because like wherever you go, they come along.
Yeah.
So the method is really to start questioning, because we really buy into things and we kind of take them at face value, or we have the conclusion of a subconscious conversation, and then we're just stuck with, the end result, or the fear, or the, oh my goodness, I can't do this. This is not for me. Or, oh my goodness, FOMO, I must do this, even though you don't feel aligned, right? But when we start questioning our own motives, our own thoughts, our own emotions, and sort of like approach them with curiosity, it changes everything. That's when we start realizing that, oh, well, there are cracks in that wall. It's not so solid. And maybe there's an opening for me to rediscover who I am and reconnect with me, and then be aligned. And when you allow that little voice in and you start, attuning to it, like you're attuning sort of a guitar or a piano, you'll hear it more and more.
Very good. You just kind of touched a little bit, but we tend to be our worst critic, use negative talk, self-talk more so than positive. How does positive self-talk really contribute to building that resilience in the face of challenges? And we have challenges, gosh, we've always had them, but I think with the world going so fast now and everything's changed so much in the last 3-4 years, that this is really important. So how does positive self-talk contribute to building resilience?
So that's a great question. And before we talk about positive self-talk, let's just talk about neutrally self-talk and understand why most of our talk may be what we deem negative, right? If we understand the functioning of the brain, that we can sort of create a new story around our thoughts, and then we can redirect them and rechannel them. So our brain is meant to sort of notice what's out of place. And the reason that it's meant to notice what's out of place, it's because thousands of years ago, if there was like, movement and foliage or whatever, it might mean that there's a prey animal, or there might be an enemy that's behind and about to kill you. So it was a life and death situation. So when we say that people are negative, or we have negative thoughts or emotions or self-talk, it's really to sort of like manage your expectations. Your brain wants to keep you safe. So it wants to let you know the worst case scenario, so you're not surprised, right? So you're horrible at this. Don't even bother to try to, get the job or the promotion or whatever it is, because, oh my goodness, what happens if you fail? But your brain's not going to say, well, what happens if you get it? Or what happens if you try and you expand your horizons and you go outside your comfort zone? Your brain will never encourage you to do that, right? It'll try to keep you safe and say, you've survived this long in this way, so stay there. Doesn't matter that you're stuck, you are alive. That's not what we want, but that's how our brain is wired, because that part of the brain is really, the reptilian part is really sort of there. Its main function is simply to keep you safe. So it does not like change, good or bad. It has no judgment on good or bad. It just, you're changing something. Why are you changing something? Don't change this, right? You can be miserable. That's why people stay in horrible jobs or terrible relationships, or, sort of dire circumstances, or you have a bad habit, it's hard to break, or you want to have create a good habit and it's hard to keep up. If you want it, why, what's holding you back? Where's sort of that tug of war, that internal dissonance? It's your brain saying, but you've done it for so long in this way and it works so well. Doesn't matter if you're miserable, but look, you're alive. So it's first understanding that that's the premise. So once we understand that, we don't have to take our negative thoughts personally as a reflection of truly who we are or what we believe in. And then we start questioning. I like to, it's like junk mail, right? So you get mail in your mailbox. It's not all addressed to you. It's not all mail that you want. It certainly can be unsolicited, especially when we talk about like digital mail today. And some of it might be something that you just want to discard. And so your thoughts are like that. Your brain generates tons of thoughts. And the more that we are bombarded and we are overstimulated, we will have a lot more negative thoughts because there are a lot more things for your brain to fear and to have to filter. But if you don't buy into any of it, you just approach it and say, hold on a second, I would just want to explore it. Do I agree with this thought? This negative self-talk that I have, do I really agree with that? And if I could choose my thought right now, would I really think I'm ugly, horrible, useless, worthless, whatever it is, not good enough for the promotion, or too little, too much, right? It's never just okay. What would I choose as a thought if I could? Because chances are that's what's more aligned with you. And then you could start understanding that there is a big discrepancy between what your brain's going to generate versus what you are actually aligned with. And you need to be in the driver's seat. Your brain's your best assistant, but it's not meant to be in control because it gets overwhelmed.
Yeah, and it can affect your health and everything.
Absolutely. And it does for a lot of
Yeah, it does. So, what are some of the future trends or developments do you see in the field of self-talk and self-compassion? And I love that today there is such an openness in the world about, hey, I need to talk out things. Things aren't okay. And, used to be such a taboo. I was born in the late 50s. And so, if you didn't act like everything was awesome, even in the 70s and 80s, whenever I was raising my kids, it's like you had to always be perfect. And so that led you to a lot of negative self-talk because you weren't.
absolutely.
People, everybody, you can't be perfect. Don't try. Don't waste your time. So talk about the future trends and developments and what can we look forward to?
I love the fact that there is more self-awareness today, that there's a global shift towards more openness and all of that and exploration as opposed to just fearing going inward, right? There was, the times that you're talking about, there were many fears around like, just we don't go inward, we don't discuss this, you have to be mainstream, follow. There was sort of this ideal, the ideal family, the ideal person, the ideal thought, the ideal feeling, and people might have been miserable inside, but it's not something to ever be discussed. Whereas today it's much more open. So for me, openness means opportunity and it means possibility for people. It means allowing the space for however it is that you feel without judgment. There's a lot of judgment, right? With that came values, but also a lot of judgment. So when we don't judge anything and we just look at it for what it is, and we just go in and be curious and ask questions and ask ourselves, what is it that I feel? Not why, because why is judgmental, but what? What is this trying to tell me? What is it that I'm feeling? And without creating a story around it, just looking at it, it's going to give you a lot of information. Oh, I'm uncomfortable with this. Oh, this is beyond my comfort zone right now. How do I take smaller steps? Or actually, I'm not afraid, I'm excited, right? I really want that promotion. There's something holding me back, but it's not my belief system. It might be my parents' belief system, right? Try too hard, don't be too ambitious, or don't, women can't do this, or a good family man should be that. I mean, there's so many ideals that were created that some people have absorbed, but they may not be their own. So it's really trying to dismantle those things and figuring out who am I and what did I inherit or what did I absorb that's not me. And it's our birthright to go through that exercise, I feel.
Yeah. So good. So we'll talk about compassion and how does practicing compassionate self-talk contribute to a mental health and emotional well-being, particularly in terms of reducing stress, anxiety, and depression? Because, That depression and anxiety is really on the forefront of the news and what you hear today, not only in adults, but in young people. And I think, for those out there in my audience that may be parents, you look at your middle school, high schoolers, and there's a lot of kids that are depressed today. So, how can we teach our kids how to have compassionate self-talk? And I think it's really leading by example, but I'd love for your thoughts.
It's absolutely leading by example, but it's a very challenging society today because and it's sad to see that kids are dealing
Yeah.
with all of that at an age where they don't yet have the tools to mitigate or to sort of
Yeah.
with any of it actually. But they are overstimulated and they are bombarded by so many different things. So imagine their brain that is
Yeah.
not fully shaped and formed yet has to filter out so much more than our brains did when we were kids.
Mm-hmm.
In the generation of parents that are trying to parent these kids in this new kind of, context, did not have to go through that. You would go out and play and you could go out and play and that you're not missing out on anything and you're not having to, socially sort of perform on, 10 different platforms that are virtual plus one that's real. That's much too much for the brain. And for the young brain, they just need to understand your brain can't handle all that.
Yeah.
When a kid understands that it's not them, that they're okay, that what they're feeling makes sense, that they need to slow down, that maybe social media doesn't have to be something that they spend hours and hours a day on, they start to understand who they are, which we do as adults slowly, right? But kids don't yet have that awareness. But when parents lead by example, but also talk about these things with kids, because as much as society is very open today, it's also all about sort of fitting in.
Mm-hmm. And that
And
even is true in businesses,
100%. And that's the scary part because then
Mhm.
it feels like you're supposed to have a voice, but you don't even have a voice. You have a lot more fears because the brain has to deal with a lot more things that can go wrong because there's when you have followers on Instagram, if you don't get the likes that you wanted, that's already sort of like threatening as a friend who says, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Right.
Mhm.
So there are way too many things today that can go wrong. And so the brain is really overloaded. So we need to understand we need to clear the space because I get so many emails a day that I can't even look through all of them. And
Yeah,
that doesn't
I
make sense,
can believe
right?
it. I
And it
know.
just doesn't make sense. So, I listen to the news only to a certain extent because there's just too much and it's always bad news and it's always
Yeah.
like catastrophes and it makes you feel like it's in your backyard. So
Hmm.
the brain actually goes sort of like, into sort of survival mode with high intensity, and that leads to anxiety. But we need to really learn to discern. This is mine, this is not mine. How do you feel about this? What do you think about this?
Hmm.
Dialoguing with our kids, first with ourselves.
Yeah.
You can't do with somebody else what you can't do with yourself. And then
Mm.
dialoguing with our kids to make sure that they are aware of themselves and that they can find within this chaos their own identity and their own path. Because I think kids are very, very lost today because there are so many directions that sometimes there aren't any directions anymore, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
I think you touched on this in the very beginning about fear. So you talk about the fear loop and how we can get out of that.
So I guess you're asking about that.
Hmm.
Fear is our biggest indicator and messenger,
Yeah.
but we are so afraid of feeling fear, right? If we're not just afraid of what we're afraid of, we're actually afraid of the feeling of fear.
Hmm.
And that's what we have to work through. And fear is just a messenger. Doesn't
Right, right.
mean anything wrong. It doesn't mean the fear is legitimate. It doesn't mean you even agree with it.
Hmm.
So if you have fears of spiders, for example, funny example, you'll come into the room, there's a spider. Oh my God, you're leaving the room, you're leaving the house, or you got somebody, right? So it grips you and it's no longer your logic. It's no longer what you want, but you may not want to be afraid of spiders, right? But so imagine now it's not spiders, it's a promotion at work. It's
Hmm.
a relationship. It's something, moving to a new community that might be better. It's choosing or deciding to become a parent or choosing to have another child. It could be anything, right? Changing careers, what, all these life choices. It could be something small, it could be something big, taking a trip, going skydiving, I don't know, whatever speaks to you. But we are so afraid of feeling fear that anything that we think might engender it is something we're going to absolutely avoid.
Yeah.
So imagine how limited we make ourselves, as opposed to, for example, I had once a client who was afraid of flying. So it's not that they're going to crash, right? It was the feeling of the fear that
Yeah.
was generating all this anxiety. So we worked through that and we identified the fact that you are afraid of the fear. You're not afraid of flying, you're afraid of the fear. And
Mm.
once we were able to deflate that, then there was sort of like, okay, so how do we mitigate the flying? What do you want to do before? How do you want to prepare yourself? How do you want to like let go and relinquish control? Because it's a need for extreme control, right?
Mm.
So when you understand your emotions, when you're curious about them and not afraid, and you don't judge yourself and assess who you are based on your thoughts and your emotions, there's a lot more space for a lot more.
Mm.
And
Almost.
that's going to free yourself.
Mm-hmm. I was just, as you were saying that, I was just thinking, if you embrace that you are going to have fear,
Yeah,
but, how do you work through it? Knowing, I think for me, I used to be terrified of heights. Now, I still don't like heights. I still know that I have a fear if I'm in a really, really tall space or something, that I'm going to have that adrenaline and all that. But it doesn't prevent me from trying things. I was in, I believe it was in the Toronto area. There's one of the skyscrapers that has the top floor is glass. And I thought, well, I know I can fall through this floor. So I'm just going to go, even though. And so I did it and faced that fear. But of course, my heart was racing and everything, but I made it through. And I think that's what sometimes that we have to do. It's like whenever after I retired and started my business, there were a lot of things that I could have said no to because the fear of unknown, the fear
correct.
of failure, all that. And I thought, you know what? If it's not going to put me in jail or kill me, I'm going to give it a try. So it's working through, not eliminating the fear, but
Oh
I
no, you
guess,
bring it along for the ride, right? So,
yeah.
and when you understand that the fear is simply a messenger, it's an indicator. It's like your alarm letting you know, sort of, there might be something that you want to go check out. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong, right? So then it's a question of your sensitivity. So, I have sort of an alarm system, but depending on the sensitivity for emotion, there could be like, leaves flying or wind blowing, and it can let me know there's movement. Now, I don't need to know that. So I adjust the sensitivity. Within
Mm,
ourselves, we can reprogram ourselves and adjust the sensitivity. But really, fear is simply a messenger. What happens is we judge the fear. We're
yeah.
afraid of the fear and we start judging it and create a whole story around it. Okay, if
Hmm.
I'm afraid, I can't do that. And if I can't do that, maybe I should do something that resembles that or that's close to that. And then it snowballs into this huge thing where you're kind of frozen at home.
Hmm.
Right? It's exaggerated, but it does spiral. Whereas if we're not afraid of fear, we'll just go check it out. And
Yeah.
sometimes it'll be something that really, maybe, I don't know, if, you don't want to skydive and it's legitimate and you agree that you don't want to skydive because if the parachute doesn't, open up, you're kind of, that's it, then you don't have,
It's
right?
that,
Like it's okay for the fear to sort of tell you, hey, are you sure you want to do this? It's like a
yeah.
check-in. Look at
Yeah.
fear as a check-in, not as something that has to abruptly, take over your life and have a grip on you that controls you from that point forward.
Yeah.
And then you believe the fear and you start identifying, I'm a person who can do this, but I can't do that because I'm afraid of that. And by the way, a lot of people are not just afraid of failure, they're also afraid of success.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Be afraid,
Yeah.
be afraid of what you ask for. I
Yes. Be careful what you
remember
ask for.
whenever I was taking a trip for Toastmasters to Malaysia way back in 2014 or so. No, yeah, 2014. And there was a plane that went down in that area, mysteriously lost. And so people were like, "Oh, you're gonna not fly, right? You're not gonna go there." I was like, um, no, I am going to go. And they're like saying prayers for me or everything.
Right.
And I said, well, if it's my time to go, I guess it's my time to go. But if I would have fed that fear and listened to others, I would have missed one of the best experiences that I ever had.
Right.
And I think that's what we forget. You know, there is the fear of missing out. That is true
There's
too.
also the fear of missing out, but so it depends what's driving us. But the
Uh,
other thing with fear is if you feed it, it grows, the appetite grows. So in
mhm.
other words, it doesn't even remain status quo. If you had not gone to on that trip, you probably would have next time around also been much more conservative or much more careful. So fear grows. It also doesn't stay where it is, which we also don't realize that once we feed it, it's going to be more demanding next time and more limiting. So we have to pick and choose whether we want to be growth oriented and then that grows, or fear oriented and then that grows. So limited or expanding.
Mhm.
We can't just stay in the middle. There's no
Yeah.
such.
So when you talk about winning from the inside out, uh, explain what you truly, how that ties and wraps all this in a bow, what we've been just
Yes,
talking about.
it kind of does. Yeah, that's the kind of funny that you're saying it that way because it kind of does. We're so goal oriented, external goal oriented. That's how we sort of measure success.
Mm.
But we're not so much process vested.
Yeah.
And the true result lies in how well we invest in the process, how well
Yeah.
we are committed to the process. It's not, the goal is great because it'll just dictate the direction. But after that, you need to put it aside and be vested in your process. And it starts from within. Are you
Mm.
whole with what you're doing? Are you checking in at every step of the way? Is something holding you back? Or are you chasing something or are you avoiding something? Because usually that's where we're at, one or the other. But in the middle of that, in between both of those, is really our authentic path.
Mm.
And by sort of working through what I call layers, which are all that gunk and those fears and limiting beliefs, and checking in and making sure that we are not deciding things for the sake of getting them off our plates, but really choosing each time. So checking in with ourselves,
Yeah.
making sure that the motivation and what's sort of instructing the next action is really aligned with us, and that will lead to success. But that's success from the inside out. In other words, once you're good on the inside, that will be reflected in your outer world. You want to change your outer world, change your inner landscape.
Mm. So good. Well, you have shared a lot of insights, a lot of thought-provoking ideas. Hopefully, the audience will spend a little bit of time pondering on their own lives and their own fears and thinking about how can I change my inner landscape to shift to the external outcomes that you want. If you enjoy this podcast and you think I'd love to chat a little bit more with Martine, you need to go grab a paper and pencil right away so you can write down the information. But you do know that it will be on my YouTube channel, Vicki Noethling. So if you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe, as well as you can find everything in the show notes on findyourleadershipconfidence.com. So those listening, the website is martinecohen.com. That's MartineCohen.com. Facebook is martine.cohen.73. LinkedIn is Martine Cohen ML, and Instagram is Martine Cohen _. I'm going to turn it over to Martine. She's going to talk about her 7-day transformative journey, as well as she'll share some of the things that you can find on her website, as well as what she does out there on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, and where she spends the most time, so you can DM to get a quick answer from her if you have any questions. Martine.
Yes, so thank you, Vicki. So if anybody wants to reach out, I give talks, workshops to different companies, corporations, teams, if people are team leaders, as well as private sessions and ongoing sort of packages. I'm also keynote speaker on various subjects, including success from the inside out, the mindset shift, self-talk to success, conscious communication. And as a gift to your listeners today, they can either reach out to me at info@martinecohen.com or just go straight to martinecohen.com/guide to inner calm. And it is a 7-day sort of free guide to start becoming aware of your thoughts, start questioning them, quieting your mind. And every day there's like little exercises that they can do and things that they can reflect on, and some tidbits to help them work through that, including also the fear that we had talked about in the fear loop. My book is also available on Amazon, No More Layers. Discover Your Inner Power and Reclaim True Freedom from the Inside Out.
Awesome.
The book talks about my journey, talks about relationship to self, relationship to life, and relationship to others, so that we can remove all those layers that stand between who we think we are or must be versus who we know ourselves to truly be who we could be and have a vision of. There's a chapter on leadership. There's a number of chapters on relationships. And there are also exercises at the end of each chapter, because there are different kinds of learners and people process in different ways. So really to reach the audience where they're at. So I encourage you also to take a look at that. And it's for now available on Amazon, and shortly will also be available on Barnes and Nobles.
Fantastic, Martine. It's been just wonderful chatting with you. You really gave a lot of great advice for people, and it is a subject that I think is relevant. And, people do need to be self-aware and be able to start to make a difference, winning from the inside out. As always, I remind everyone that life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling, signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.